Good morning, everybody. So, like Bob said, my name is Kevin. Let me give just a quick little intro. I work for a company called QSys. We do network-based audio-video control systems, so I live in this all day and night, pretty much. But myself, Byron here, we're part of the Lucy Depp Light Show. It's half a mile down the road from here. You probably passed it on your way. It is, and these numbers are actually wrong. This
I was just going to call you out.
Yeah, I grabbed this slide from last year. So it's now 10 acres, 7 houses, 8 houses now. We had 2. Roughly, I think last year we had 84,000 pixels between all those houses. It's all synchronized together. The whole thing's tied together, and we use FPP to tie it together. So
it's your tree wraps that are amazing.
yes, it's all trees that are wrapped. There's about 300-400 trees, all wrapped between 100 and 200 pixels each. When I get done and we get into show and tell, I'll pull up some pictures of it if everybody wants to see it. But that, I guess that makes me the resident expert on FPP. So who here knows what FPP is? Who's used it? Cool. All right, this should be pretty easy then. So we're going to go over just how to get started basically with it. We're going to go over how do you install it, how do you configure it, how do you upgrade it, and then Q&A time. So those seem to be the most challenges we see, I see perusing the Facebook groups about it. So for those who haven't done it, yes?
If you would, so where do you feel is the best online source for FPP information?
I usually go to the actual FPP group. I'm trying to remember what it is on Facebook. It is
FPP. Just search for FPP.
Yeah, just search for FPP
on Facebook.
On Facebook.
Okay.
That's good. There are a lot of older posts about on one of the older forums, Christmas lighting or something. Yeah. Dan's still on there. I mean, to me, the best source is reading the GitHub notes and reading commit notes. And if you understand software development, you'll know exactly what's going on. You can see their bug fixes. You can see everything. So GitHub's my best spot to find info. But if you're getting started, the FPP group's really good. Dan's pretty involved in it. And their help documentation is really good. They just rewrote it for V7, so I think it's a couple 100-page PDF. And then just play with it. The best part about it is if you totally screw it up, you'll never break your Pi. You just re-image it and start it over again. So what is this FPP? FPP is Falcon Pi Player. This is not something you write your Christmas light show in. This solely just plays back your light show. It's a piece of software. It comes compiled as an image. So it is Linux plus FPP put together. It's designed to run on, we'll get to in a second what it runs on. But the idea is this is what I run my show up. I'm not dedicating a computer. I'm not using my computer. I use X-Lights on to do it. I run FPP on, we'll show in 2 slides, a bunch of little mini computers to be able to play back. Some of the big advantages, I can use it for multiplayer. So like I said, we have 20 FPPs. I'm not streaming all that, what would it be, 147,000 channels for our show across the network. I'm streaming one packet every second saying, here's where I'm at, and all the players synchronize. So for synchronizing multiple players, it's really, really easy to do. And it either outputs directly to native controllers, so most popular being Colt, but I know there's a bunch of new ones that do that, but players that just run FPP right on them, or I can run it standalone and output DDP, 131, ArcNet, DMX, any protocol you can think of, it can also stream out. So I actually use this at work. We had somebody put in a commercial NTech system, and their playback software was garbage, and I just spun it up on a server and used FPP to stream. And the guy programming the NTech, I finished about 2 days before him and had the whole thing modeled and redone by the time he actually got his contract done. So it's really, really versatile what you can do with it. So let's go over installing. This can sort of be the trickiest part if you're getting started.
You may well let people know that it's free.
Yes, it is free. It is free. It is Very well developed. Dan Culp, who makes Culp controllers, is very involved in the development of it, along with, I think there's about 10 other guys on it. It's all open source. You can follow the source code off GitHub. It's very cool project. Very, very tightly integrated with Xwise, so I'll show that. There's a reason there's not a whole section today about how to configure your outputs, because Xwise will just automatically do it. So, what can run it? Raspberry Pis. Pretty much any Pi, with the caveat of Pi 5, won't run it until later this year, but 2, 3, 4, B, B+, 0, every variant of 0, 0W, 0, everything.
Now, is that, I'm just curious, can I really grab my old Pi 2s and really get a good, I'd like to hear the real world experience.
Yeah, I mean, I ran 3+s all the time. We still use 3+. There's really no advantage to
Original Pi.
Oh, okay.
yeah. So where it falls apart is if you're trying to do like matrix straight out of it or the HDMI out. That's where it will chug. But if you're just outputting channels, it's not that intensive at all. My development and testing was a 0, like the original 0. So I had that with PoE cape and everything, and I've never really choked it. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but yeah, there's the biggest advantage you get going from 3+ to a 4 is you go from 100 meg NIC to a gig. If you're putting out so like P5, P10 panels, that becomes important. Otherwise, there's really not that, it's not heavy enough to really use the advantage you got when you went to Pi 4 or Pi 5. So I keep them on the 3+s because they're much cheaper.
And that might add the advantage of using remotes in a situation like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't see the load.
Yep, and that's our other thing. Our 187,000 channels, that's not coming out of one. It's coming out of all 20. So everyone's not putting out that much. And then they're syncing together.
Do you have to pay a fee if you're using a certain type of hat for it, like a call hat or something?
So and somebody can correct me if this, the manufacturer's supposed to include that with it. It all comes down to there's like one library for driving string pixels. I believe they're all supposed to include that. If they don't include that, that's the one time. So if you use, Culp includes it with his, I think Experience Lights includes it with theirs. It's some of the more startup type controllers you'll see that might not include it. So that's if you're driving strings straight off a Beagle bone. It's like this very niche use case. If you're doing a Pi, you'll never need it. If you're streaming out to another controller, you won't need it. It's just, there's this huge influx of capes, and they were trying to do something to help protect and just help with the huge support influx they got with it. So, yeah. Yeah, so that is the one. So and that gets into BeagleBone. So all of Culp's controllers, except for 1 or 2, are BeagleBone based. It's very similar to a Pi, just a little small. Hardened. It runs Linux a little bit faster than the Pi, but it's really for what we're doing. You won't see it. And then I've got some asterisks on these. You can also run it on a silicon-based Mac directly. You can run it on a bare metal PC, which was actually really great during COVID. I can go on eBay and find an awfully small form factor PC for 25 bucks. There's not as easy way to install it. You've got to be a little familiar with putting Linux on the computer, but if you can do that, that's what we run our main player, which all it does is output audio, is running on an old Tough Book that we just threw it on. So the update process gets a little bit trickier, but it's Linux. If it can run Linux, you can run it on. And you can run it in a VM, and I've done that a lot. The only real caveat I run into doing it with a VM is audio pass-through can be a little choppy. But lighting output, I've ran it Hyper-V, ESXi. I'm actually running it in parallels on an ARM here today, and it seems to be doing okay. So
KVM?
yeah, I had with Proxmox, which sits on top of ADM, was getting, it didn't like, when it was passing through the sound blaster, the audio
I'm
was
not
getting
surprised you
crazy.
had issues with sound. Because the hypervisor's gonna stop execution.
Yeah, so that's the only issue, but like, the ones I do for work have no sound, those are all Hyper-V based. And they work great, so, and there's guys out there like doing in Docker and everything you can imagine. The biggest thing is what it doesn't run on. So this doesn't run today on Pi 5 version 8, which is an alpha release, add support for it. Doesn't run on Falcon controllers, doesn't run on Windows, so I can't just natively spin it up on Windows. If I want to go down the VM route, I could, or Intel Macs. So really, you want to dedicate some piece of hardware to running your FPP. Most people, that will either be a Pi, or it will be, you've got a dedicated controller. You've got a call, you've got an experience with something that runs FPP by itself. So when you go to download, just go on Google, type in download Falcon Pi Player. It will take you right to GitHub. And it's a little hard to see here with black, but you'll have a couple different options on there. There will be 4 different main versions you can choose from. So there is a .fppos, we'll talk about that later for doing upgrades, and there's a .image.zip. If you're starting from scratch, you use the image file. That is the whole image of Linux plus FPP, and it downloads and gives you an image file that you'll push. There are separate versions for BeagleBone and FPP, so like in my case, I would BeagleBone and Pi, so in my case, I downloaded FPP version 7.5 Pi image zip, and that's what we use for today's demo. And then you will burn it to an SD card. So tons of programs out there. I use Etcher, which is free. Etcher works great cross-platform. I've also used Win32 Disk Imager. There's many options you can do to burn to that. But basically, you'll load in your image file, select your SD card, and hit go. Depending on how fast your SD card writer is, it'll take 2 to 8 minutes or so.
One thing about the SD card, be very careful to get a quality brand memory card, because the whole thing is running off that card, and there's a lot of brands out there that will fail and cause you a lot of frustration. And be careful where you buy it too, because if you want to buy a SanDisk, which is a good brand from AliExpress, high chance it's not going to be a SanDisk. So memory card quality is very important for this.
Yeah, so, and you need at least 8 gig class 4 or higher. It is really hard to find a class 4 nowadays. You're going to find class 10.
They're all
pretty much
10s.
everywhere. Yeah. So, we've used Micro Centers ones for the past couple of years. They're great, they're cheap, they're easy. And we proactively, about every 2-3 years, just replace them.
And by the way, sign up for Microsoft's emailing. They will send you a coupon at least twice a year for free cards.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and 8 gig, I don't think you can even get an 8 gig from it anymore. If you're looking at like 32 or 64. Like a 32 gig Micro Center one's like under $5, I think. It's so cheap to get them. That's why we just proactively go and do them every couple of years, and then we just keep a spare one in each controller box. So here's the last, especially when we went from like 6 to 7, I kept a copy of 6 in every one, copy of 7, and then it's at a point now. Once it's stable, we take all those back and we have a bunch preloaded, ready to go, and push them out that way. So we write it, we plug it in, and what do we do then? So if you plug a display into the Pi, you're going to see about 6 lines here. You don't actually configure it unless you set up a touchscreen on your Pi and put it in kiosk mode. You never actually use the interface of the Pi. You don't put a keyboard mouse on it. You don't put a monitor. It will just tell you, here's my IP, go here to do it. There is a command line if you need to get in on the Linux side, but I never do that. You can SSH into the box. So, a couple ways to connect to it. My favorite one, when it boots, if you have an audio device connected, it will actually say out loud, here's my IP address. So, like when I did this off my TV pushed it out the HDMI. every time it boots, and you can disable that, like if you're connected to an FM transmitter and you're worried about somebody hearing your IP, you can turn that off. But that is a great, easy way, like carry a little pair of headphones in your bag, plug them in the headphone jack on the Pi, it'll boot and tell you the IP. It's also a great way to know FPP actually booted, and you know that your system's running. You can also, if it's not, so if it is a Pi that has Wi-Fi in it and it doesn't sense an internet connection, it will self-host its own access network. So it'll host a wireless network called FPP. The password is Christmas. You can connect in that way and get connected to it. Or by default, a new one out of the box, its hosting will be set to FPP. So as long as you have DNS set up on your router, you can just go in a browser to http://fpp/ or fpp.local. I'm assuming there's probably maybe one other person in this room who actually uses a different DNS suffix. There's some other network engineer in here, but for the most part, everybody's going to be fpp.local or just FPP for the default. And we'll talk about in a second why you should change that. And worst case, you can scan your network. It'll advertise the host name, so you can see here, mine advertised fpp.rhodusnet, which is my network. You can see the Mac. It won't say Parallels, it'll say Raspberry Pi or BeagleBone based off what you're using. That is there's tons of IP scanners. There's an Angry IP scanner. I use a program called Wireless Network Watcher. It's got some really cool features. There's tons of free ways to do that. Or you can go on your router and just look at your DHCP leases. So, yeah, so that's one of the multitude of ways to find it once you get it up. So let's pop out a slide. Let's actually play with one. So I'm actually going to come over here for a second. We'll start on this one. Okay, cool. So once this originally came up, you type in, you find your IP, or just type in FTP, you will be presented with this initial setup screen. So, a couple initial settings. UI password. This is if you want to throw a password on logging into the actual unit. I don't normally do this. We don't give out our show network, and if Byron forgets how to get in, then that's a bad day. Yeah. But you can set a password there. OS password. So this is the actual password of the Linux side. I am hoping nobody port forwards their Pi or BeagleBone out to the internet. If you are, we should talk later. Do not do that. By default, so this is basically the default. There's a Linux FPP user. By default, the password is Falcon. If you want to change it, you can change it right here. I haven't done it on any of ours because we never really go in there. We can set the mode, so there's player and remote. For those who've used it for a while, you remember there used to be a couple other modes. There was bridge. They basically have consolidated a lot. So a player will play back the file, and if enabled, send out the sync packet to everybody, all the others on the network. A remote is just listening for the sync packet. So a remote will never run a schedule or try and run the sequence natively. It always needs a player to initiate that on the network. So you should, if you're doing if you're having multiple of these, you should have one player in your system and as many remotes as you want. And this is not a hard setting. I'll show you. You can flip it back and forth between. One of the nice things, if I want to stream from X light, so when I'm programming, I turn on the light bulb, I want to see what it looks like. I don't have to flip my players anymore. You used to have to flip them all into bridge mode, then remember to flip them back. Yep. Regardless of player or bridge mode, they will take an input coming to them. And then host name here. So this is really important, and I've seen this trip up. When I change this host name, that changes what name it is on the network. So if I change this from FPP, I can no longer go to http://fpp or fpp.local. But this allows me to name them all. You can actually 100% address your system and never have to set an IP address if you do all your host names and if you have hosting running on your network. That's how we do it. We've got 70 so IPs, I don't want to memorize all those. So we do everything by host name. So if I make this, we'll call this test pi. When I do that, we'll see in a second, it's going to prompt me to reboot. This will now show up on my network as test pi FPP, and I can just address it that way. And you can even set it up in X-Lights that way. Host description, so this adds a nice description. It'll pull in, I think it pulls in when you do FPP Connect in X-Lights, when you're looking at the main page. So this might be something a little verbose, a little more verbose. This is my Pi 3B plus test unit. You can put your email address here. This is actually really helpful for crash logs. If you have your email in, it'll associate it with it. And then if they see something interesting in the logs, the developers can reach back out to you. So, throw my email in. You can either choose right here to enable or disable sharing your statistics with the dev team, or banner means when I hit save, it's going to pop up on a banner. I always share it. It sends them anonymous data, but it lets them see what platforms are being used. It helps the dev team figure out where to prioritize features. And then your next one. So in your share crash data, by default, it includes settings and configs. If you're worried about sending that, you can choose what level you want to send crash log. But these are actually important. We went to, I want to say, 7.3 last year. And I had Patrick Delaney actually reach out to me. If any of you know Patrick, he's real involved. He's on the testing side of FPP. And he goes, hey, I was told, and him and I know each other well, he goes, hey, I see all your players are crashing, what did you do? And I'm like, well, I upgraded, and I have all these F40s in this issue. And they fixed it within like 2 days. So sending that crash data is great. They proactively can see what's going on. And then a lot of this you'll just keep default. So if you want to fetch cape logos, so it'll show the logo of what cape you're running up there. If you want to report the serial number back to the vendor so they can make sure, see what capes are actually going out. If there is a cape on here, so by default, like the calls will auto detect which controller you have tied to it. But in the case of a Pi, you might have something additional on it, so you can choose that. And then the last ones all come down to time. So locale, you can choose Canada, global, US. This really affects the dates in the calendar. So when you say, I want Halloween, I want Christmas, I want this, some of those change a little bit based off where you are. So I always said US, and then time zone and latitude and longitude. This is all used to calculate dawn and dusk. So the nice thing is I just hit look up time zone, look up location. It finds it based off my IP address, and it gets it close enough. Like, it doesn't need to be 100% accurate. I always offset it anyways. I do. We run a sequence overnight. I let it run until 30 minutes past dawn. So, but you can do that there. And once you get that all done, you'll scroll right back up and hit finish, and it's going to prompt you. You probably need to reboot. We're going to wait a second to reboot this one. One of the most important ones, this SD card has unused space. So by default, it partitions the SD card as 3.4 gigs. Well, in my case, I've got, I think there's a 32 in here. I can have whatever size SD card. You want to have all that room available, so you'll hit this grow file system, and we'll see it's going to go ahead and expand it. And now, once it grew it up to 28.9 gigs. So it allows me to use the rest of the space available on my SD card to store my chip. Yes?
So, question, I know last year there was controversy about putting an actual hard drive on your Pi with FPP. Have you heard if they fixed that or changed that? I know there was discussion about that they didn't really want to do it.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I know some people were trying to run, I think where they ran into some issues was trying to run a hard drive and an SD. Yeah.
I
thought I had the SSD.
Yeah,
Yeah, it has to
I
be
know one time
NVMe.
we did that,
For the
yeah.
newest ones.
But I didn't know if maybe they changed that because, you know, there is the question of reliability and
Yeah.
I leave my master up year round.
Yeah. Yeah, most ours run year-round, and they're, I mean, regardless, a SD or an NVMe is gonna have X amount of writes
Right.
until it goes bad. And these are being stored outside in core climately controlled boxes, like it's just a hazard of it, so.
I know.
To me, the cost of an SD versus an NVMe, like SDs are so much cheaper, I'd just rather replace them every couple of years and live with that. Yes?
One thing I can add, professionally, the company I work for sells more SSDs than any company in the world. And what a lot of people don't understand when we made the transition from hard drives to either memory SSDs or flash cards is that the data on them over time, and then time meaning like as early as 3 months or a year later, will degrade. So in other words, if you think that you are even taking backups to an SSD and putting it on a shelf and you unplug it, a year later you could lose data. It's this isn't conjecture. This is, now, the way you prevent that is, believe it or not, they simply need to have power to it. They don't have to be active, you don't have to be reading or writing, so you have to have the refresh circuit up and running. So just to let everybody know, that controversy is interesting to me, but that's the issue that nobody seems to understand or talk about.
Cool, yeah. So let's go back, let's see if this one rebooted yet. Cool, so we changed our host name,
He's unplugged right now.
expanded our storage, so if we go back to our storage. That was on one of these. Oh, what?
FPP settings.
Yep, that's right. Which is perfect, that's where we are.
Change your UI.
Yep. So the first thing in your FPP settings, under UI, take it up to at least advanced. There's a lot of settings they hide by default. Advanced shows more than a lot of the ones that I end up using. You can go all the way up to developer, but you might, developer exposes some things that can get you in trouble. So, the other thing I like to do while we are here in UI is, in our case, we have a lot of these. I set the header colors different. So you can set, and this way it will show up both here and in multi-sync, different colors. So we do it based off which house, and every house gets a different color assigned. It makes it just a lot easier. It makes it a lot easier when you're it's 2 in the morning, you're trying to figure something out, and you look at here, and I know, unless I'm on the green bar at the top, this isn't my main unit, and I've logged into the wrong ones many a times. Having the color there makes it really helpful. So, and if you want to make your UI look different, you can tweak all sorts of stuff here. But we can see now under our storage that we've expanded out, now we have 24 gigs available. Pop-up is still showing. So, now we've got it up and going. How do we get our show to it? So I'm going to pop over to X-Lights. Here's my show. And we're going to just add in a new controller. So I'm going to add an Ethernet. We're going to call this our Light Up Ohio test. And we're going to set our vendor as FPP. Now, there's a lot of different things you do if you had a cape coming off it, everything you're doing. In our case, we're just going to get a file up to our FPP. So I'm going to set it as a player only. I'm going to get my IP address here. You can see, so I'm going to address this one with IP because I don't know what the network here is like. But you can see all our other ones. All of these I just addressed by host name. You can take that host name and put it right in, and X-Lights will talk. I think the only thing that doesn't work right is if you try to do the open button down here. Depending, if you're using .local, you're fine. If you're using a custom DNS search name, it'll have some issues. But I've got it set up here. If this were, like, let's go into one of our K40s here. One of the beautiful things, if you're not using visualize function in X-Lights, you really should be. I have not configured a single channel on a controller in probably 3 years now. So it's not even worth like trying to go back and do it those days. Visualize, I can just drag any model I've got, just drag it right up and it'll do all my channel assignment. So we don't even think about channel assignment anymore. We just drag and put stuff where it belongs and let it handle it. And X-Lights will automatically then go and configure FPP for you. So once I do it, you can have auto upload configuration. We don't personally do it because between Byron and myself, we are constantly changing our model, but there are times we don't. I might be changing it during the day, but I want to see what I did the night before. So I want to make sure I'm consciously pushing an update to my show file when I'm doing my model update. If it were just me, I'd probably do it here because I just automatically go right in. So, yes, Bob.
There's a quick point I'll make about whenever you auto push your configuration. If you have, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I only have like I had 4 FPP controllers in the show last year. It does, if you're like me and you have a computer set up and you push the output the lights button, it sends the auto configure up to all your FPP controllers. Now, whether they changed or not doesn't matter. It just does it. It's an automatic thing. And in some cases, it's great. But when you're just trying to output the lights really quick, what I noticed was there's a delay. There's a pretty decent sized lag. And I didn't understand what was going on until I looked at the bottom of the screen. So be aware that if you have a significant number and you're doing your testing like I was from my garage, walking out of the garage and out and looking around the corner to make sure such and such was planned, I couldn't understand why there was that lag. So just something to be conscious and aware of.
Yep. Yeah, the other thing too, if you have it on here, you'll see everything sort of sequential, channel number wise. If I auto update one of my top ones, all my other ones got to change. So I would rather keep it off, and then I go through, I select all of them, and I update them all at once. But we're a little unique that we're doing, 20 players off this. So, but that will auto upload all the outputs. So we'll go in. Let's save our setting. We've got our White of Ohio test pushing to our Pi here. And now if we just go into a sequence, I think I've still got one. I got my alignment test open. I can go straight to FPP Connect. And there we go. It found our test one we're running today. And I can just choose what sequence I want to send. So I'm going to send our alignment test up and upload. And it was that quick, it's done. Down in the bottom here, it will tell you when it's done because sometimes it pops away so quickly what's going on. But FPP Connect, upload complete. So if we had channel outputs, which we don't in this scenario, it would configure them automatically for us under our channel output section. But it also uploaded our sequence. So if we go to our file management, there we go. There's my alignment test sequence right there. And so this is where if we want a very basic playlist, we'll just make our playlist. This is our White of Ohio test. And I'm going to come and add my sequence. And save. And now I have my playlist made. And I can go in and schedule this. I can play this back from the main remote or from the main page. It's that easy. That's got all my channel config and my actual showing. So I can come to my White of Ohio test. You can also play sequences directly right from here. So if I just wanted to play that sequence, and I can start playing it, and it's going to play it out. It's playing it to nowhere because there's nothing going. So let's take a look. Let's pop back over here. So, multi-sync here. In multi-sync, this is how we can tie multiple players together. So we have that option. Do I want my player to be a player or a remote? Once I do that, I come into on my main player and we enable send multi-sync packets. And now all my remotes, we see how they're recording. This one's recording as a player. These are really hard to see, but remote, 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 and then player with multi-sync. So we're going to flip the player we're on right now to a remote. And now you'll notice the big difference when I go to the main page. I don't have any play ability. I have, here are devices that I'm discovering on the network, and it's just giving me statistics of the multi-sync messages it's getting.
So when you did that on the main,
Yep.
it obviously did some communication out to that remote, said, hey, I'm the main now, you're a remote.
I did this right on
Forced
my-
him into remote mode?
This is the test one we just set up, so I just set it to be a remote.
Oh, you did set it, I'm sorry, I
Yep.
missed that. Okay.
Yeah, that's where I just flipped it right here to be a remote. The nice thing is, even on my remotes, I can still go in and see everything multi-sync. So now I can go, we'll go to our main player. One thing you want to make sure is you can have multiple players, no problem. What you don't want to have is multiple players with multi-sync enabled. That will cause issues on your network. So you want to make sure you only have one that's putting out multi-sync. So you can see we have send multi-sync on. If we come down to more settings, you have the ability to choose, do you want to do it via multicast or via broadcast? That's a whole other class to dive into when you would do which. Or if you want to just manually specify where you're sending that message out to. And now when we go to play on our master, or player, it used to be called master, it will send it out and everybody will start syncing to it. So, let's jump back into our slides for just a minute on updating. So, they changed this, maybe version 7, version 6, and they basically split at some point along the way, the FPP version and the OS version. And so it's really important when a new version comes out to pay attention to what does this upgrade need. So this can all be found right on that Google Download Falcon Pi player. You go to the releases page on GitHub, and the first thing you'll see, here's the version. So 7.5 is the latest. No, OS level is not changed and will remain at 2023.12. So FPP versions are always a major minor. So 7.5 is the latest release. There's an alpha of 8.0, so this year you'll see all the 8.0 releases. The OS is always year dot release number. So this is 2023.12 is the OS version. So in FPP, if you click up on the version number, it'll pull up this little window here. It will tell me I'm running 7.3.5, I'm on a BeagleBone, I'm running 2023.11, it's Debian 11, all the information about it. In this case, from 7.3.5 to 7.5, there was no OS upgrade needed. So what I can do is just hit upgrade FPP. It's going to pull in all the updates, and when it gets done, it'll say close and you reboot your player. So it'll automatically go straight to GitHub, pull all the updates down, and send them out. If you have a version, so in this case, 7.4, had an OS level update. There's a couple ways you can do it. One, you can go to GitHub, go to that page, download the FPP OS file. That's going to contain both 7.4 and the updated OS. I can just log in and upload that as a file to my player, and then go straight in back to my About FPP, and you see this Upgrade OS drop down we have. And from that Upgrade OS drop down, I can choose, the first ones that don't say download are that version I locally uploaded. So in the case where my Pi might not have internet access, or it's got really slow internet access, I can download on a laptop, go connect it, upload it from the laptop. The second option, as you can see, you can go and just download it straight to the player. So this would go out to GitHub, pull it down, automatically download it. I do this option a lot. The downside is if I'm trying to do all 20 are going out and trying to download that, and it's about a gig download. The third option is you can upload it to one player, and this is really good if you have multiple players, and then under multi-sync, there's actually an action at the bottom, copy OS upgrade file, and I can copy an OS upgrade file from one player out to all the other players. And then I can also execute, run the update that way. So if we take a look, mine's not going to want to do an upgrade, but if we come back to our multi-sync.
What if you want to downgrade? You uploaded a version, it sucks, and you want to go back to where you were.
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay.
Yep. The best way to do that, because you don't know what they've changed in the OS, would just be to upload a lower FPP OS and just do a whole OS.
Basically reinstall.
It will reinstall, but it will preserve your settings.
Oh, good.
And everything. Yep. And that's really the last section I want to get to is FPP backup. Once you have everything running, let me pull out a PowerPoint because it's still on the screen. Once you have everything running, please do this. Go to status control FPP backup. And what you want to do is just right here, I always include sensitive data. Basically, it's, I don't know, if there's a password, it includes the passwords. So if there's another storage device, if I plug in a USB thumb drive, something, I can do it there. Or I can just hit download config. And it's going to download a text file. We take a look at it. Here's a text-based backup of my entire player. So it's going to go around. That's every setting I've set on my player. So I can back it all up. I don't usually back up all my media stuff because I can just push again from Xlite, but having the config backed up is wonderful. If it dies, you ever have to reload it, you just come right back here into restore config, grab your config you made, and push it right back. So I try to do that, opening night, going back up all our players so we have it, and that way you have a good copy to back it up. The text file is teeny. Go throw it on Google Drive, throw it somewhere. Ideally, throw it not somewhere on the same computer that you configure everything from, so if that computer dies, you lose everything. Email it to yourself, do something. So, and that's really the basics of getting started with FPP. There's tons of other stuff you can dive into with it. There's all sorts of other things, but that's sort of just to get up and going. That's the base part. There's one last thing I want to show on the other one we're in. Let me pull up. Let's find one with some outputs, just so you shouldn't ever have to come in, but there are times you want to. Let's go to this guy. So channel outputs. This is one of the nice things, so you'll see here, this is pulling in, this is a F8 PB, so it's an 8 output called controller. You'll see here, this all got populated from FPP. One of the nice things when I use Visualizer, it looks at what models are tied to that port, pulls in their names, so you can actually see what you're looking at, pulls in start channel, pixel count, if there's groups, what direction. The nice part is all these settings really you should be setting in Xlights. So that way it tracks, it uploads it all. If for some reason you needed to manually configure it, you could always come in and add here. if you have start nulls, end nulls, if you're doing any zigzag, your brightness, your gamma correction. You can set all that in here, but if I do it in X-Lights, it saves it with my show folder, and that way it will always upload all that information to that output when it's configuring it. And this is also where you can get into if I want to set up some other outputs. So if I want to drive a USB DMX adapter off my BeagleBone, I can do that if I want to send out different stuff. Input output is where you get into specifying all your different types of outputs. So, what questions?
I think I have a basic question. What's the advantage over a scheduler? I use that scheduler, I use it for years, very simple, works great for me.
It's not running Windows. It's not running on top of Windows. So you don't have to worry about Windows updates and any of that stuff. So otherwise, in our case, my big advantage is I'm running this out at every controller. So when I want to keep my show split up and only send that one sync packet on the network, that's where this really shines. Now, I can also run these as remotes and have Xscheduler sit on top of them. That works fine too. So I don't have to have my main player be FPP. It could be Xscheduler as well. In my case, I just like having a dedicated piece of gear that just sits and runs it, and I don't have to worry about that. Don't worry about updates popping up or somebody else logging on the computer and accidentally logging it out, all that stuff. But you have a dedicated PC running Xscheduler, you'll have the same result. So.
Now, the one thing that intrigued me is this other channel outputs.
Yeah.
I want to add a projector,
Yep.
but I want the projector to sync with the actual sequences. I don't want to just, like right now, I just run it, it runs all the time.
Yeah.
So, I might have a snowman pop up on the projector and I'm running a religious song, they don't fit together.
Yeah.
So can I do that here? Is that where that, how would I?
Yes.
Does the projector take DMX then?
I don't know what that means, I guess.
You can actually set it up to output. So there's two ways you can do it. One, you can send controls to a projector, like if you want to turn it on and off. But you can have a, let's see if it, probably won't make it, I'm on a BeagleBone. On a Pi, yeah, you can set up you can use the HDMI output of the Pi to play your video file out. And then you can tie that in and have it be follow your sequences. When you get to that sequence, stop the video and do it that way. So
Now, if you are going to do HDMI output, what level Pi do you think you need minimum?
probably 3, like 3B
Oh, a
plus.
3 plus would do
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's easy.
I mean, if you're buying new, I'd buy a 3B plus, or I forget they even still make them, like 3B plus or more. 3B plus is plenty for what we're doing now. So
I think the important thing is that you want to run it as a multi-sync because you don't want to push the video.
correct. Yeah. Yeah, you definitely don't want to try and push the video, or like if you're doing matrices, that's where this is really helpful. I don't want to send all that matrix data out
Right.
on the network. I'd rather have all that data live on that Pi and just get the sync.
I have 3 projectors that just run a loop in FPP that are just kind of separate. And I have another one that is synced with the show. And I only do one song with one video in it, but it goes on the multi-sync from my master to start that video and stop that video.
I'll come and visit.
You can come and visit it. It's my biggest pain in the,
Okay.
but yes, come and visit.
And there's ways within sequences you can send commands to other players to start and stop sequence. So like, if you don't want the video completely always burned in, then there's a lot of different ways you can send messaging between. We do a whole day class on FPP and
Tom came to this to watch the crowd work on that.
Yeah.
Likely over that work setting for people.
Yeah. Let's go in. It changed used to be able to click on the name and when you did the post settings. So, yep, so, under DNS, one important thing when you're setting this up, if you're doing a static IP, make sure you set your DNS. If you want to be able to pull updates automatically. You can also get into some real crazy settings of routing between using the Pi as a router. I'm always of the mindset just build a show network, makes life easier, but you can get into all those things. So.
One of the benefits of this, and you didn't talk about the add-ons, you know, he was asking why would you do this over a computer. I mean, you can Wi-Fi right into these and be in the yard and start and stop. So that way you're not at the computer, hit stop, then you run outside and you look and, oh, that didn't work, now I gotta go back inside and, you know, so there's one of the big, but there's a lot of add-ons in here that, you know, like your big green start button, you know, so if you wanted to do something like where you did a big start the lights of the night, you know, you want a little kid to hit the button on your phone and then the lights will start. You know, similar to like Great Christmas Light, you know, that's basically how they're doing it, you know, when they come up with some elaborate start. But there's a lot of add-ons that do that.
Yeah, there's tons of plugins available. There's also, we use this all the time, the test mode in here is wonderful.
Yeah.
Especially now they added multi-sync test mode, so I can turn on my master and all my remotes turn on. I can show you, we wrote a whole crazy way to do all this on our own, but this makes it so much easier. I wrote a whole piece of software to monitor and control stuff. So.
You have just the one Pi. I ran my whole show on
Yeah.
my phone last year. Somebody makes a
Yep.
request, go and it's outdated.
Yeah, and there's some really cool plugins to be able to have people request songs, but I mean, it's a really powerful and scalable platform and stuff you can do with it.
All right, well, guys, I think we're going to move on. Kevin, thank you.
Yeah.